Welcome to today's Substack Live. I am here with my good friend Denver Riggleman, who there's so many things to talk about, but Denver was a former member of Congress of the Republican persuasion. Um, no more is he a member of Congress or of the Republican persuasion. Denver, you actually just endorsed, Denver represented a district in Virginia in the Commonwealth, the great Commonwealth of Virginia, but you just endorsed Abigail Spanberger
I
uh,
did.
for governor in Virginia. That's how far you've run from your previous Republican
Well, I think,
era.
Julie, yeah, I mean, I ran. I don't know if I ran from them or they ran from me, right?
They
And
ran from you, I think.
yeah, and it's funny, when I think, when I know that probably the party has left you is when your own party calls you the tool of the Antichrist. That's an intelligence indicator, right? That maybe that things have gone wrong, right, with the party. But yeah, I did. I definitely endorsed Abigail Spanberger because I always want to endorse reality over fantasy. And if you look at her opponent, Winsome Sears, it's somebody who I believe is incapable of making decisions using rational and facts-based type of things like data. So I'm going to go with Abby. Plus, I agree with her policies. I met Abby in the 116th Congress. We became very close. As you know, I was Air Force Intelligence and National
Yeah.
Security Agency and technical data stuff that I did. Abby was law enforcement and CIA, so we sort of bonded in that way. Plus, we're both Virginians, and we did some bipartisan stuff that got me in a lot of trouble, but not her in as much trouble. So, but yeah, but Abby's always been a great supporter of mine too, and there's no way that I'm not going to go with the best person, regardless of the D or the R behind their name. And Abigail Spanberger is a solid, good human being, and she's what's best for Virginia, and I'm going to go that way.
Yeah, and you cut a great ad with Barbara Comstock, another former Republican member of Congress who also left the House because the party
Oh,
has left
Trump,
her. Yeah, I mean
Trump.
Trump has driven. It's really amazing how many normal Republicans Trump has driven out of um, office. The last one, who I guess is fighting to cling to his sanity and normalcy, is Don Bacon, who's now retiring. And I don't know if he's retiring because of Trump or he just knows he's going to lose that seat in Nebraska. But
Uh,
if you're even remotely deviant, deviate, if you remotely deviate, I'm not suggesting Don Bacon is a deviant. If you even remotely
he's
deviate,
not. I know Don. He's not.
yeah, sorry, Congressman. I know you're not well, I don't know that you're
Yeah,
not a deviant, but Denver says you're not. But if you
yeah.
remotely deviate from the party line, even a little bit, even though Don Bacon hasn't signed on to a whole bunch of Democratic priorities or even normal priorities like releasing the Epstein files, but even there, that's it.
Yeah,
Persona
it
non
is.
grata.
It's incredible, and, I know Bits pretty well. That's his call sign, Don Bits Bacon, right?
Mhm.
Mine was Chunk when I was in the Air Force. So, but I think
We
Bits
got to do a whole separate show on that. But okay, go
just
ahead.
well,
Why it's chunk?
yeah, well, that's a long story, and, and I got that call sign, drunk on Jeremiah weed, so that's a long story, but
Okay.
I think, I don't even know if people sell Jeremiah weed anymore, but I think with Don, I think he wants to do other things, but I do think he thinks that him not being completely MAGA will cost him the primary or maybe
Yeah.
even the election, right? He's probably in a R+1 or a D+1
I
district.
think it's more of a D+1. He's in a tough. I mean,
It,
to his credit, he hung on longer than he should have in that kind of district.
he did.
Yeah.
So, and plus, I think he thinks things are just nutty as they are right now, especially with what's going on this week, as me and you were talking about before you went live.
Well, I want to talk about that because what the hell? Why should we have these private discussions and not let everybody else in on them?
I don't know.
We were talking about how, like, and I've said this before. If anybody watches Mayday Media Network stuff and over it, I've said this with the ladies before, but I feel like we're living in Berlin 1933. And what I keep saying to my husband is, I don't want to stick around for 34, 35, or 36. And so I kind of am like, is it time to go yet? And he, of course, being a nice white Catholic boy from New Jersey, who's never, who's always played by the rules and has always succeeded playing by the rules and never really had a horrible setback in the way that I have, as being a former Soviet refugee, he can't quite wrap his mind around, like, well, things can't really get that bad, could they? And I said, but you are such a World War II aficionado. You read and reread The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich to the point where I'm starting to get concerned about why he's doing that all the time. Like, you're watching all these, like, Holocaust documentaries, you're watching all these World War II documentaries. Intellectually that people in Germany also said it can't really get that bad, can it? Until it did. And I know from my grandmother is a great example, right? She was the eldest of 3 kids. She was born in 1901, so when the Russian Revolution happened in 1917, she was 16. She went off to medical school. Her 2 younger siblings left, literally walked from,
Mm.
their shtetl to what was then Palestine, and started a whole different life there, and she was gonna join them after she was done with medical school, and then the borders closed. And so I've never forgotten that I think she thought, "Well, it's not gonna get that bad. Eventually, I'm gonna be able to leave. I'm gonna be able to leave. I'm gonna be able to leave," until you couldn't. I'm not saying the borders are gonna close here. But what I am saying is, at which point, Denver, and I'll ask you, is this whole designation of Antifa, for instance, as an anti-terrorist organization going to redound on those of us who are anti-fascist, which is what this country's turning into, because there is no such organization as Antifa, which means that you can define Antifa as anything in the world, including those of us who oppose authoritarianism and fascism.
I came up with some other acronyms, Julie, like AGAFA, against fascism, right? Right? And not a fan of fascism, not a FOFA. So
HOFA.
I did come up, yeah, not a FOFA, which so I came up with some other acronyms the other day where people could actually be happy that there's other acronyms that can mean against fascism. And I'm doing it tongue in cheek with horror
Yeah.
because anti-fascism literally means anti-fascism. So if you're anti-fascism, what does that make you? That's a tough answer, right? That's a tough answer when you go double negative.
I'll tell you what that makes you. That makes you, if you ever visit Normandy and if you ever go to the German cemetery in Normandy, it makes you one of the people buried in those graves. Because
That's what exact
there is a German cemetery in Normandy
there
for
is.
the German soldiers who died during the D-Day invasion.
Absolutely.
That's what that makes you.
It's funny. It is what makes it is. And, somebody being a military veteran, as you know, Julie, I mean, me
Mhm.
and you, are very close in that way. I think what I find incredible, I was raised very religious, and there's always a pivot to what authoritarianism is, or despotism, right? Tyranny. And there's always going to be a pivot, right? And what we're seeing right now is this sort of bizarre cult-like Christo-fascist fake martyrdom cult-like push for people who probably don't deserve it. And then wrapping them in the flag and in the majority Christianity nation that we have right now, and then forcing people to feel like they have to defend themselves if they don't think that Charlie Kirk was somehow worthy of these honors, which for me, as somebody who sees him for what he is, I don't know if Charlie Kirk, who I think is a racist, should be the person we're actually honoring in Congress. I think that's a little ridiculous, or flying the flags at half staff. So what I'm seeing right now is that there's this downstream cascading effect. You're talking about 1933. I find it interesting that the lever point here, right, is things we can't prove again. It's almost like this fantasy based government of gaslighting that's forcing people into an us or them type of, I would say, posture. And I think that's gonna be absolutely awful. I just see it getting worse, Julie, and you weren't as stunned as I was, right? You're like, "Dan, I wasn't stunned." I'm still stunned about, and I never think I get stunned, right? Julie, how
Because you know what? It's a good thing that you were stunned. I sincerely mean that. It's because you grew up in a country that for 248 and a half years, I'm not suggesting this country was always perfect. Of course it wasn't, but it was trending in the right direction.
it
Always.
well, we've
Always,
hit a
right?
little bit of a roadblock, I think, Julie, and,
Yeah.
just a little
But
bit.
until now, right? And that's the
Yeah.
problem. The problem is until now, until really, I wouldn't say January of 20. Oh, well, maybe it was January of 2025 because it almost happened immediately. So I say that to say that if you don't come from a country like I came from, which was obviously a totalitarian, despotic country, the Soviet Union, and you weren't imbued with those kinds of uh, beliefs from your parents as to what is possible, and if you don't go through it yourself and you don't go through the whole refugee plight yourself, of course you wouldn't believe that it's happening because all you've ever known is a country that has, in your lifetime, done the right thing, especially by a nice white guy like you from Virginia, right? Like life's been pretty good for you
Dare
guys.
you call me nice.
No, I know, but
But
I'm just,
but
but you know what I mean. Like
I do,
the
I've seen it.
reality is, it's not like you grew up, a poor black man in
It's
you know,
true. True
the south
story.
side of Chicago back in the day, which probably means that you would be a little bit less shocked about what's happening right now to people like you than somebody like that would be, or somebody like me would be coming
I
from where I came from. So it's actually a good thing. I mean, I'm not. It's you should be shocked, and everybody watching this should be shocked, and it's just a question of what to do next. And I got to be honest, you brought up this whole resolution that all but I think 58 or 56 members of the House just voted on to um,
honor
create
Charlie
honor
Kirk.
to this hagiography of Charlie Kirk. Like, when I see stuff like that, that's the stuff that makes me want to get on the first plane out of here, because it's the Democratic Party that is bending the knee. Because the Democratic Party, and you tell me you worked with these guys on the Hill, the Democratic Party is so afraid and terrified of being painted as, I don't even know what they're afraid of being painted as, I guess, unsympathetic, unempathetic, a word that Charlie Kirk absolutely loathed, the word empathy, that they are honoring somebody that they know full well was a racist and a misogynist
Yep.
and a homophobe
Yep.
and, uh, you know, an anti-democratic with a small d person, somebody who perpetuated the great replacement theory even after the fact that when he was first coming up in 2015, you had a guy named Dylan Roof walk into a black church in South Carolina and massacre black people because he believed in the great replacement theory, and Charlie Kirk still doubled down on that. And then the Tree of Life massacre happened where somebody walked into a synagogue in Pittsburgh and said that Jews are replacing them, and the Great Replacement Theory was the reason for why he killed those Jews, and Charlie Kirk still doubled down on the Great Replacement Theory. And then somebody else walked into a Latino majority Walmart down in Texas and massacred, I think, 24 or so Latino people, and Charlie Kirk still doubled down on the Great Replacement Theory. And then somebody else walked into a Tops, into a Tops supermarket in Buffalo and
Yes.
massacred black people because of the Great Replacement Theory, and Charlie Kirk still doubled down on that. It was doubling down on that up until August. I apologize. August, last month, and would have still been doubling down on that if he were living today. It is not, we could hold two things at the same time. What happened to Charlie Kirk should never have happened. It is a tragedy for him. It is a tragedy for his wife. It is a tragedy for his kids. It is a tragedy for his parents if they're still alive. It is a tragedy for his movement. It is a tragedy for America, because nobody should die in political violence. You can hold that to be true while still not honoring a man who was all of these things and said all of these things. And yet you're telling me that the Democratic Party, including the first black minority leader and his leadership team, which is comprised of Latinos and women, all of whom Charlie Kirk disdained and said that they were there because of affirmative action and affirmative action only, just voted to honor him. What the hell kind of party is this? And how are the rest of us supposed to feel that we're being protected by somebody in Capitol Hill when they're doing this?
Well, I mean, that was something that you were taught. If you were going to play team ball, that you had to check your spine at the speaker's lobby. And I think they're checking their spine at the speaker's lobby and they're not even picking it back up. And the fact that a lot of them voted present, I mean, first of all, you vote present on a resolution, you are an absolute coward. I don't care who you are. The other thing too, the people who voted no, good on them.
Yep.
But you know what? How about all the Republicans who voted yes without even looking at one fact of Charlie Kirk's life that could, somehow maybe invalidate their vote? But it's not going to happen, Julie. And I mean, I know there's a lot of people watching right now, but the thing on the congressional floor is that for the most part, people are going to follow party lines. But what do politicians always revert to when they're voting? Fear, right? Fear of not getting the fundraising, fear of being castigated, fear of standing up. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. And I know that I did those things. And I think that's one of the things, Julie, when I said I was shocked, I'm an intelligence analyst who warned about this on a speech on the floor in December 2020 that fantasy based policy could destroy our country. Here we are in 2025, and we're looking at Oklahoma telling public universities that they have to have statues of Charlie Kirk in every single public university. Are you kidding me? I that's where you're right, Julie. You know what? I always like to say I'm such a badass. I'm never shocked because I'm such a great intelligence analyst and operator, and I've been through it all. But I have to tell you, I would be lying to you to say I was not absolutely blown away by how far they're taking this supposed martyrdom. And I think that is because of the 2026 midterms. I think they know they're behind, and I think they're trying to rabble rouse. They're trying to get their base going, and they're going to do it in any way. And if it's gaslighting through Christianity or martyrdom, I think that's exactly what they're going to do.
And that's exactly what they're doing. And the thing is, it's a playbook that it's not a secret playbook, right? Like the only
No,
shocking thing that happened was that Charlie Kirk was killed. Everything that happened since the moment that he was shot, even before he was pronounced dead, is entirely predictable. We know and we knew what MAGA was going to do because, of course, they were going to seize this opportunity. You know, what's that famous phrase? Out of chaos comes opportunity. That's exactly what happened here. Of course, they were going to seize this opportunity to clamp down on free speech, on dissent, on um, basically anything that is not entirely in line with their worldview. That that should not shock any of us, and it's going to get worse, right? What we can expect from Trump and from the administration and from MAGA is just for things to get worse. It is going to get worse. What I'm shocked about, although I guess here I would say I'm going to take some responsibility. I should not have been shocked. I worked in this party for 30 years, and I worked on the Hill, and I worked with some of these members who either voted present or voted yes. What I can't believe is that they still haven't learned their lesson. After everything, they still haven't learned their lesson. I don't care if some Republican, by the way, a lot of these people are in safe districts. What are they worried about? Honestly, what is Hakeem
uh,
Jeffries worried about? That he's going to get primaried from the right by somebody who loves Charlie Kirk and he's going to lose? Like, what are you worried about? You are representing a
it's
district in Brooklyn that you're never going to lose. What are you worried about? That somebody's going to turn and say, oh, look at him. He's not respecting a moment of silence or he's not respecting a resolution in honor of Charlie Kirk, somebody who has consistently spoken ill of people in Hakeem Jeffries' own community, of women, of gay people, of trans people, of Jews, of anybody who didn't believe in his biblical interpretation of Christianity, who was not a white man, somebody who told young women that they should go to college to get their MRS degree because they're going to age out of looking hot when they get older, and therefore their only opportunity to get a husband is now because by the time they wake up and get a husband, all the good ones will be taken by the hotter girls. Like, this is what Charlie Kirk said. What are these members voting for? And they're afraid of what exactly? Seriously, what are they afraid of? And
s-
I'll tell
okay.
you what they're afraid of. They're afraid of Fox News and
Yeah,
the New York Post and right wing media
right wing
saying, oh
media
my,
is
yeah, oh my God, they're not supporting somebody who got killed in a political assassination. To which I say, where is the resolution honoring all the kids who die in school shootings? This is a school shooting. Where is the resolution honoring Melissa Hortman? Hortman.
well, I'd put that out on social media that Melissa Hortman should be added to any resolution with Charlie Kirk if we're going to talk about honoring people of political violence that have been killed.
Or have a resolution honoring
And,
the victims of political
and the
violence.
victims of political violence across
Period.
the period. And
I'd
you know,
vote for that.
I would too. And I think but that doesn't help the Republican base, right? When you're looking at R plus 8 or plus districts,
Yeah.
and the fact it helps their fundraising and they get an invite to the White House, right? They get to go to the new patio, the new Rose Garden concrete patio, right? And walk around and hobnob and take selfies, right? And listen to the pitter patter of senility that comes from Donald Trump. And I just find it incredible that that's where we're at. And, you've said some things that really strike me, especially as somebody who was in the Republican Party. And I never I didn't think it'd be everybody, Julie. I just can't but you know what? I'm not a very religious guy either, so maybe that's part of it, right, Julie? Maybe it's that I'm not religious, and I'm sure that's gonna help me with any other future elections, but, if I would ever run again, I think I might rather self-immolate. But, so, I mean, I think that's the issue that I have right now is that we are being used against each other, but there is a mining of the ignorant that's happening on a massive level, and then utilizing lies in a far right media that dominates the left media. It dominates independent media. It dominates center right media. The far right media is a juggernaut because it's funded, right? They coordinate messaging. We know that from the NRCC, the RNC, and the president on down through the whip teams, the influencers get the same messaging on the same email threads, and they all continually magnify that messaging. You have coordinated malign influence operations going on everywhere, right? And people are like, and I've had people say, Denver, how dare you? You're just going over the right, the right, the right. Well, that's because I've been there, right? I can look at left malign influence operations. We can talk about ACAB and we can talk about 1619. I can do all this stuff, right? And what happened over there. And this is different. I'm trying to be this thing that I don't know if it's even possible, Julie, where if you can just use data, but we're so emotional now, but there's no way for me to maneuver with nuance or critical thought within any of these waves. I don't know how to do it yet. And I thought I did. Another reason I'm shocked, that's two things, right? I know I got to go house to house. I know it's one-on-one, but how in the hell do I get out there and say, guys, just look at the facts and the data and let's make decisions. Let's make facts-based policy, not fantasy-based policy. Aliens are not coming out of the sea. We don't have UFOs attacking us, right? We shouldn't be doing hearings on that. These type of things, right? We need to look at what people are really going through. But I think we're so down the fantasy, supernatural weirdness. I just don't know how to pull back on those levers right now.
You
Anyway,
said
that was a rant. Sorry
no,
about
you said
that.
something. You said something that actually just really struck me. So I don't know if you know this. I used to work at Fox News for a long time, and I used to have all of these conversations with Roger Ailes, who I can talk about the conversations. I can't talk about other things with Roger Ailes because I have an NDA, but I can talk about these particular conversations. Roger Ailes would have me in his office all the time, um, picking my brain, and Roger Ailes was convinced that I and every other Democrat of a certain, or maybe he thought all Democrats altogether, were getting on phone calls on a daily basis and getting marching orders from Barack Obama or, the DNC or Hillary Clinton or whoever he thought was puppeteering us. And I used to always kind of joke in my own mind. I was like, what does he think? Like, we literally all get on some big conference call and I'll have like, a conversation with each other until I realized the moment you were speaking just now that of course Roger Ailes would think that because that's what was happening on his side.
That's what they do.
And
That's all
and
they do.
and and as I'm sitting there scoffing, being like, "What is he crazy? He thinks we all get on a phone call together, and I get marching orders, and I get talking points from Barack Obama every day. Like, where does he think this is coming from?" Of course, that's what he thought. You're so right because that's
Let me
what was
break some
happening on
news.
his side.
You ready for me to break some news here?
Yes.
First impeachment, all of the Republican congressmen got on the phone with Donald Trump and he told them what was going to be said and what was going to be done. So come on now. I mean, that's what happens. And if you don't think all this is coordinated from all of these people from Ben Shapiro on down the line to Matt Walsh, right, to Benny Johnson, to Scott Jennings, all these individuals, right? They're just doing the party line. Facts don't matter. They're going to pick and they're going to cherry pick one bad thing here or there, and they could be right. The issue is this. This is the great thing about argument and debate. You can take a fact here and a fact here and put them together and make something that is not factual at all. And that's what happens with disinformation and things of that nature. They take a fact here that's like, oh my God, the George Floyd riots, and they take a fact over here. You know what? It's just this. It's J6. Then they put those together and they try to compare them. There's no comparison between the Floyd riots, right, and governmental intervention for coup-like activities to overthrow a free and fair election. Those are two separate things. There's nuance. There's critical thought. And that's what happens. So you have this one way, this transmit only messaging system that's coordinated throughout most of the GOP, specifically from Trump on down, right? And they used to have a group around Dan Scavino that would do this, and that's how they do it. And I start laughing, right? Because Julie, the Democrats look like a 12-armed octopus fighting each other, right? Like the arms hate each other and they can't get on the same line because it's either ideological purity also, or they're not understanding the battle space, or they're looking at a specific thing, that they have to be 100% right with somebody else. GOP, they're going to be 100% right with each other because they just want to win.
Yeah.
Winners make history. McCarthy told me that when I went through orientation, right? And you do anything to win because everything else doesn't matter. Democrats haven't learned that yet. And I'm telling you right now, everybody thinks there's going to be a huge sweep in the 26 midterms. They better buckle up. Republicans are coming. The only ads that you see here in Virginia against Abby are transgender, anti-transgender ads. That's it, right? They're saying she's evil and things like that. Why is she mad? Because she's lying. That's all they can do. right? But it's very effective, and the Democrats need to get on the same page, or I'm telling you, it's not gonna be as good as they think it is in 2026.
Well, I would love for Democrats to get on the same page, but first they have to stop emulating Republicans. I don't mean to sound like the Democratic version of MAGA here, but when they're because I'm not. I mean, God, I have been an establishment
Yeah.
Democrat my whole life, and I'm starting to sound like AOC here because effectively they are so out of their depth. It's like they're like reading the Robert's Rules of Order. They're still trying to figure out whether I think as recently as
The
I
Marcus
guar
of Queensberry rules,
yeah,
right?
totally, right? Like Chuck Schumer is now being, like, stressed because he's being put in a position to either be accused of shutting down the government or he has to vote for this shitty continuing resolution because Republicans are threatening to blame him if the government shuts down. And I guarantee you, they're sitting there stressed, "Oh my god, how do we handle we're gonna be blamed for this." Are you kidding me? They control the White House, they control the Senate, they control the House, they control the levers of government, they control the Supreme Court, they control the majority of state legislatures, they control the majority of governorships, they control the majority of lower court seats. And Chuck Schumer is going to be responsible for the bad stuff that happens in your life? There you go. There's your 2-second soundbite right there.
I'm sure
But
Chuck Schumer will have some intellectual argument on the floor, right? I'm not the bad guy. The GOP is, and let me tell you why. First of all, milk has gone up 1.3%.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. I mean,
you know,
exactly.
it's
Exactly. And
unbelievable.
there's going to be a 17-point plan in 3-point font on a whiteboard that's going to be presented on the Senate floor.
And the
As opposed,
Republicans are winning by calling the Democrats reptilian humanoids,
yeah, as opposed
right?
to saying, it's pardon my language, but it's supposed to say, get the fuck out of here with your bullshit. You're in
That would.
charge of everything. You own the government.
Yep.
You fix it. You want to fund it? Go ahead and fund it. And by the way, you have a majority in the Senate. Go ahead and fund it that way. And if you don't want to fund it with a majority, get rid of the filibuster.
I think every
Congratulations.
Democrat needs to go on illegal steroids.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think they need a little testicular fortitude. How about that?
Anybody,
Uh,
down the line, down
yeah.
the line. But yeah.
Hey, Denver, I wanted to talk to you really quickly. I know we don't have all afternoon, but I want to talk to you really quickly because you are like the expert in this, and in the midst of everything else that's going on, that's completely terrifying. This, in the back of my mind, is one of the more terrifying things. So they've got all our data, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, listen, guys, and I don't know if everybody's going to just get off here en masse when I tell everybody this, but I
It
hate to
needs to
be
it
the
needs to it needs to be heard, my friends, even though it's a
hate to
Friday
be the bearer.
afternoon. We're gonna ruin your weekend, but go ahead, Denver.
Do you know the type of data I can get just with a PI license? Do you know that I can download all your identity resolution data? And you're like, Denver, what is that? There's nobody on this call, if I know your name, that I can't get your phone number, your address, all your past addresses, and your closest contacts very, very quickly. It's very easy when you look at identity resolution databases. Now, when you start adding AI to that and merging data, narrative data, now you can start taking any type of data. You can take form data, you can take Excel spreadsheet data, you can take document data, you could take unstructured data. You can ingest that, and I could make a link map of Julie right now. If I just have Julie's name and I know Julie and I can go on Wikipedia, I can take all that. Here's the other thing that I can do with Julie. I hope everybody's ready for this. Julie's on YouTube a lot. I would love to make an AI Julie, right? So I can start making AI Julie. And with the way that inflection is happening around, that AI is dealing with inflection and conversational AI, which I have an AI company, as you know, Julie. I can do some crazy things. I can make AI Julie. I can have Julie actually, I can pinpoint her messaging for every congressional district with the different crosstabs in the polling for every single district. That's the good stuff. What can I do bad stuff? I can make Julie sound worse than Charlie Kirk. Right? I can do any of that. I can get her exact language, exact syntax. I can make Julie look exactly like this, right? What you see right now might be AI Julie. You guys don't know. Denver might have created AI Julie. What if Julie created AI Denver? What if I'm not real? I'm just kidding. I'm messing with everybody. But anyhow, there's all of
Or
that.
or or are you?
You never know. And here's the other thing, right? It's like what Candace Owens released about the shooter eating food, right? Which is probably AI. You have to look at sources. But when you're talking about the data that Doge has and Elon and all the data that they have, and when you're looking at the sharing of IRS data with DHS, now you're starting to get scary because here's where it even gets scarier. And then I'll stop really, Julian. You can ask me questions or we can talk. What if they have, oh my, What if they have high resolution cameras at sites where there's protests and they're getting biometric data on everybody that's protesting because they can see their faces very clearly? Now, what you can do is you can easily cross reference all that biometric data. There are things out there I can easily, if I have your face, I'm going to know who you are. So, and especially if you have DoD databases or federal databases that can cross reference your name with your biometrics with all of your personal data. Now you're trackable in a pretty easy way. And that's how the J6 committee, we were able to do identity resolution on the text messages from Mark Meadow. He didn't give us the names of the numbers. We found everybody, including Jenny Thomas. So these are the things, and that was in 2021, guys. So what you're looking at is there's more data available. You're more vulnerable. The issue that you're going to have, though, going forward, right, is how do you put that genie back in the bottle? How do you stuff that toothpaste back in the tube? You cannot. So, one of my biggest worries is about the data aggregation and data mining program that's going on. And then when you see the DoD and the intelligence community giving sole source contracts to Palantir or Anduril or all these other big companies that are just friends of Trump, you really don't know how that data is being protected either because now federal acquisition regulations have been thrown out the window. So there you go. I hope that helps everybody today. And Denver's little educational tutorial on
All
data
right.
and how you could be screwed.
Well, thank you. Good night. We're done here. Um, so if I am a layperson watching this, which I am a layperson because I know nothing about this stuff. This little quaint thing of give me the last four digits of your social because you could never, ever, ever tell anybody your social security number is kind of a joke. I mean, I think even I know that's a joke. But you're talking about having access to your health information, having access to your tax information, having access to your bank accounts, having access to how you spend your money, what you spend it on. If you go on a business trip and you decide to surf the internet and look at some inappropriate things potentially because you're away from your wife, they will know. If you ever had an abortion and that's anywhere in your medical records, they will know. If you ever have text messages between you and somebody that you should not be talking to because it would be embarrassing to your family if you were caught talking to them, they will know. The level of privacy breach here is so vast that I think what you're telling me is we should all expect that there really are no secrets anymore, short of you blinking once and not going anywhere where you're not supposed to go or talking to anybody you're not supposed to talk to or doing anything you're not supposed to do. All of that is out the window. I mean, like you should expect for all of that, if you cross the wrong people, for all of that to be made public, right?
The only thing stopping us is the barely tenuous lines of the rule of law. That's really what's stopping most things. Also, you do have some issues with aggregating massive amounts of data and storage and being able to see it. There are some limitations. And I didn't mean to paint such a bleak picture. There are some limitations. However, um, again, and I hate to say this, like I see Barbara Shields just joined, right? I'm looking at people joining live. I wonder who Barbara Shields is. And I can go and say, if Barbara had dropped a picture or something like that, Barbara's probably not, that's probably Barbara's real name, right? If I see Razzmatazz Johnny Boy, that's probably not a real name, right? So I got real names popping up and people are coming in live. The thing that you have to look at in life is when do you want to put your real name or not? But also, I can't be anonymous. Julie, you can't either. We're public figures. We
Yeah.
got to hide in the wide open. But for everybody else here, I'm having to go back through and change my passwords. I'm having to go back through and do some things right now because I'm so exposed. And I've been hacked. Denver Riggleman's been hacked. The man, right? I'm kidding, but I've been hacked. So the thing is, literally, if anybody can be hacked. If somebody's telling you, oh, it's impossible for me to be hacked, it's impossible for me to be penetrated in any way digitally and things like, no, they're lying, literally lying to you. So you have to be really, really careful about what you're doing with your data. But we are to a point that you really don't have any secrets if somebody doesn't want you to, especially if it's a bad faith actor.
What well, I'm laughing because Mason G just said two-factor authentication. It sounds to me like in 2 seconds you could figure out how to get to my second factor here, right? Like
Well, Mason's right. Two-factor authentication, you should have that on all your accounts. So look at that, Graphite or Stingray. Now, it depends on what you're talking there, right? Stingray means a couple different things. So people, I'm seeing the questions pop up. Are you talking about actually telephony, specific collection with Graphite and Stingray? Yes, I can because I was trained on it. And so that's the kind of stuff that I sort of bring to the table, Julie, as you know, is when people actually ask these questions, it's very interesting, right? That I got trained in 2006 to 2010 on multiple technologies when it comes to telephony or communications. I can't talk about it much, but it's funny that somebody knows that you can go online right now. Everybody needs to go look up Stingray. It was a great question. Go look it up, see what it does, right? And tell me if you think your phones are safe or your Wi-Fi passwords, or tell me that somebody can't park outside of your house and collect on you. Of course they can. I mean, and I'm not trying to be a fear monger at all. Just a reality check, right? A factual reality check that safety is sometimes perceived and not real. But on the most part, there's so many people out there and there's so much data. You have to have people that are very specific and directed to go after you. So there's all these things. You're going to have data dumps. You can go on the dark web, right? You can go, if you guys want to go through Tor, you can go look for your own data. There's people who can do that for you. But again, there's so many different factors that if you're not a specific target, you're probably okay. But if you are a specific target, Julie Roginsky, right? If you are a specific target, Denver Riggleman, there are issues that really, no matter what we do as public figures, there's really nowhere to escape.
So, is there anything that people can do even remotely to make themselves less of a target, or you're just saying it's just
Oh, of course, of course. I don't know if you guys know, really, it's and you guys are gonna find this funny, it's really more difficult when you're on family plans to track phones unless you have individual plans for each specific person. I can go into so much stuff here. So, right, to make sure your phones are protected, to make sure you update all the really weird stuff for cyber defense, right? Updating all your software, right? Making sure you're protected with your firewalls, right? Your anti-malware stuff and things like that. But you also, don't be stupid, right? And, which I have been in my life when I think I'm smart, right? Or you lean too far forward, or you get lazy on a password, or you log in somewhere that you're not supposed to. Or as Julie said, right? Maybe you've downloaded some kind of malware going on a site you shouldn't have gone on. Also, use VPN, right? You definitely want to use VPN. But again, it's very difficult to go through everything that you have to do because if you're not protecting your devices and your computers with the appropriate type of software, you're already vulnerable. And that's what you should be doing. Um, as far as your healthcare data and stuff like that, most of the places they should be HIPAA compliant. I'm in healthcare and insurance tech AI, so make sure that everything that you're doing is HIPAA compliant, or the people that you're working with. Just don't send your medical records willy nilly to Bob's, medical joint down next,
well,
right?
but I guess my question is if they can hack into anything, I guess they can hack into your doctor's HIPAA compliant database
It's
too,
tough.
right?
With new zero trust architectures, it's really tough, right? When you're getting to larger networks, it's tough unless you have really stupid people in charge, which is possible, right? You do have cyber breakdowns all the time. That's why you red team and do all that kind of stuff. So I don't want people, I think really people getting into your health data or getting into a HIPAA compliant system it isn't negligible, but I mean it's fairly low. So I don't want people to think that going back and forth with your doctor's office is automatically something that where you have an issue with that. I don't want you to think that at all. But I do think you've got to be specifically careful on your end to make sure your data is protected. And if you do have issues, you need to go to your doctor's office or offices, insurance, or whatever you're doing, medical offices, and say, what is your cybersecurity posture? Watch the person at the front desk head explode. But you should know what the cybersecurity posture of where your most valuable data is and what's going on there. And ask the questions. Don't be afraid.
This is all super helpful because I think, at least for me, that scandal of Elon Musk grabbing up and hoovering up all of our data seems like so long ago, except that, of course, for
Months.
for
Just
them,
months.
I mean, it feels like 27 years, but for them, of course, it hasn't been long. I mean, they did something with that data, and the question is, what to what end do they have it, and what is it for? And it concerns me because you know suddenly your voter registration could be erased. I mean, who knows, right? Who knows what can happen and how it could happen, and I'm sure it will be deployed in some way, shape, or form to advance a political agenda that I'm not even sure about yet.
Well, you know what we should do, Julie, if you ever want to. And, I hate to look Denver After Dark. You can come on. But Julie, if you ever want me to come on your show, I can bring on my cybersecurity director and my zero trust architecture guy from NSA, and we can talk to your audience about literally go through free without you having to pay for some kind of damn consultant. We can go through free and we can, take 20 to 30 minutes to go through what you can do to increase your cybersecurity posture and defense and things that you can do in the future to make sure you're locked down. If you want to do that, Julie, on your show, I would love to do it.
Wow. Well, look at
Right.
the audience here. I would love to, and it sounds like everybody else would love to also. And so I think you should. And you named the time, and I'm sure everybody here
Well, I
will
mean,
we'll put it in their calendar. We don't have to come up with a date now, but
do
I
you
would
see
love
my
to.
hair, Julie? The people that are bringing on, they're a lot smarter than me and younger. Um, I just spout stuff as a boss, as a CEO, right? They're absolutely brilliant and just so brilliant. And it's two incredible human beings, Jessica and Brian. And I would love to bring them on. And I think that people would just love them, right? Because they would go through, what are you doing? And you can ask them questions. But why not? Why not we rally around each other, protect our data, make sure we're facts based, don't fall for any type of propaganda or disinformation, and work together in a way, where we actually love each other as Americans and try to protect each other. I think that's a better way to go than what we're seeing now.
That is an incredibly amazing and generous offer, and I will take you up on it. And I'm sure everybody here who's listening now and who'll be listening or watching after I send this out would love that. So, if you don't mind, I will hold you to that, and everybody
Of
else,
course.
we will hold Denver to it, and we will all learn a lot. And I think that
Listen,
would be
I'll
super, super, super helpful for everybody. Starting with me because I don't know much about this stuff at all, and I think it's time to start being concerned. So, that's really helpful. Denver, it is. I've kept you for 45 minutes almost, and you are
That's
so
okay.
generous with your time. And it's a Friday afternoon, at least you're on the East Coast. I'm not just sure. I guess you're in Virginia, so on the East Coast for you too. And I want to just also say Denver has been doing incredible work in Ukraine. And I don't know that people know this, but you have been just an amazing ally to the Ukrainians. And as a Russian who is embarrassed and appalled and disgusted by what my former country is doing to its neighbor. I want to thank you so much for everything that you're doing. I know you're working with Ken Harbaugh, who's also incredible, and a bunch of other really good people. And I hope to join you in Ukraine one day for one of your trips because you guys are just people should look into what Ken and Denver and others are doing out there because it's incredibly courageous and needed and talk about fighting for democracy truly in the fighting sense of the word. So thank you for that too. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Can't believe on no notice whatsoever, almost 600 people. So thank you to everybody who watched us live. Thank you to everybody who's going to watch us on repeat. Thank you to Denver for offering to keep all of us safe and all our information safe. And I will see you all later. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Bye,
Julie.
Denver.
Thanks,
Have a great
everybody. We love
weekend.
you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.